I was expecting this fish to be a little tricky, and there were a few moments where I got a little confused, but I think it turned out looking pretty fish-like, so that's some kind of achievement at least. I started as always by creating stop cuts around the whole border, this time using a V-chisel, and whenever I do that I always try to create a tiny little wooden spring. With the outer stop cuts made, I then moved on to outlining the subject with stop cuts. The reason they're called stop cuts is because they make the wood break off or stop when carving to that point, as you can see right here. I tend to use small gouges to clean out the background, and luckily I have a few different sizes, which isn't necessarily essential for wood carving, but it certainly helps when doing little things like this. After that area was mostly cleared, I decided to take a photo of the fish sketch on the wood because I didn't have a copy of the drawing anywhere, and I knew I was going to be carving away important parts of the drawing as I went on, so I needed a reference. Now I'm just working out the levels. I try to figure out where the highest and the lowest points of the subject need to be. This requires lots of cuts and stopping and starting, and occasionally looking up references of actual fish so I can make sure the wood carving comes out the way I want it to. A big thanks to my patrons, by the way, who help support this channel on Patreon. Thanks to them we already have some interesting videos coming up very soon, the first of which will be the buying and testing of some experimental tools. Now I initially started to draw on the scales, but I found that just using the gouge as a guide was way more accurate. So if you place the gouge marks side by side, then make the next layer staggered so the gouge marks are halfway across the ones below, then you'll be alright, I reckon. Imagine it looks like bricks on a house, where you lay one course of bricks and then the next course is half bonded above it. I also made sure to push the gouge slightly away from the direction of the head to give these scales more chance not to break off. Then I finished all the little areas I couldn't get to with a small knife. My favourite chisel then came into play. I took away material from the scales by carving down into the parts of the design where the gouge marks meet and they form a point. This makes the scales stand out a lot more and give them that feeling of overlapping. So another way to look at it is that I'm making the curved part of the scale stick out further from the wood than the rest of the scale. And already you can see it's creating the shadows, which helps to reinforce that feeling of overlapping. The mouth and the head were kind of tricky, and I had to keep going back to reference photos to make sure I wasn't putting the eye in a stupid place or that the mouth wasn't too big. In the end I used a small knife to carve out the mouth and a tiny gouge to carve the eye. I actually got this tiny gouge and a couple of my other really tiny tools from a listing on eBay. This person was selling a little box of handmade tools that I think their grandfather made them. And I managed to get them for about £30 for the whole box. It's something like $40, $40 US, which ended up being like a really good deal. So I bought a ton of my wood carving tools from eBay, and if you're patient, you can get really good deals on there. Then, once again, the tiny knife comes to the rescue with the back fin, as it was way too small to get my V-chisel into that little gap. The rest of the fins, however, were fine for the V-chisel, though actually sometimes I do wish I had a smaller V-chisel for tighter areas and for creating different textures and stuff. All in all, the wood carving took about 2 hours, and I think if I spent another few hours on it, we could have improved it further, but these little videos are meant as tutorials rather than super detailed projects, and I figure that I can teach at least one thing per video, so that's pretty good. This is actually the 8th carving in the series so far of my 30 days of wood carving, so if you check out the other videos, you can see some tips on how to carve a stylized hare, how to carve a flower, how to carve perspective, how to carve a leaf, how to carve letters, how to carve a heart, and how to carve a rope border. For the next in this series, I'm going to carve a feather, so look out for that one soon. Thanks for watching.